Hey, it's Yesenia from Novels and Nectar. If you're new here, welcome. This is a cozy bookish corner where we talk through romance, romantasy, and whatever else I'm reading, so you can decide if a book belongs on your TBR or if you just need a quick reminder of what happened before you dive into the next installment. In each episode, I'll share a quick review, then a spoiler-heavy summary for those of you who've already read the book and just want a refresher. I will always keep the review lighter on spoilers, and I will give you a very clear warning before we move into the summary. All right, now let's get into today's book.
Hello, welcome back. Today we're talking about A Court of Thorns and Roses by Sarah J. Maas. And before we get into the review, here are a few quick stats so you know what we're walking into. This is a romantasy. Beauty and the Beast retelling meets fairy tale lore. There's a slow burn romance. We have a heroine who's discovering her powers and some dangerous courts. The story is told in first-person point of view from our main female character. And in regards to spice, I gave this a 2 out of 5. You do have some on-page intimacy and some mild scenes, but nothing very detailed. If you want a list of spicy chapters, feel free to head to the blog. Some key content warnings include graphic violence, torture, abuse, sexual coercion, captivity, and control. Okay, so with that in mind, let's go ahead and jump into the review. So I would recommend this to readers who love Beauty and the Beast retellings, slow burn, fairy romance. I first had picked up ACOTAR back in 2018, totally drawn in by the Beauty and the Beast retelling angle. And at that time, my last true reading obsession was Twilight. So I hadn't really explored romantasy just yet. I went into A Court of Thorns and Roses just hoping for something escapist and emotional and maybe another main male character to swoon over. And this book totally exceeded my expectations, as I'm sure many of you have found with this story. So Feyre, the main female character, she pulled me in right away. She's this strong, selfless, and fiery and fiercely loyal. She's strong, selfless, and fiercely loyal to her family. And like Belle, she sacrifices herself to live in an unknown place to protect the ones that she loves. Her relationship with Tamlin gave me exactly what I was craving at the time. It's this slow tension, unspoken desire with push and pull dynamic between them. And I still laugh thinking about the scene where he bites her and there's like this teasing that follows with Lucien at the table. They had me grinning with their growing banter. By the middle of the book, though, I started to get frustrated with how long Feyre held back from admitting her feelings for Tamlin. This ultimately leads them to all be taken under the mountain. And at this point, we see the tall, dark, and handsome character from earlier reappear, and I was so confused by his change in behavior. Like, why was he helping her? What were his motives? And more importantly, why was Tamlin just standing there doing nothing when Feyre was risking everything? His lack of action, even after she returned to save his people, started to get really frustrating for me. By the ending, everything felt a little bit predictable, but I still really enjoyed the full arc and the emotional payoff. Sarah leaves us just enough loose ends to keep you wondering what's next, and I was definitely ready for more. This was the book that pretty much opened the door to romantasy for me, and so it still holds a very special place in my heart because of that. All right, so from here on out, we're going to go ahead and be jumping into full spoilers. I'm going to be walking you through a detailed summary of A Court of Thorns and Roses. So if you have not read it yet and you want to go in blind, this is your cue to pause here, read the book, then come on back if you need a refresher before you jump into the next installment. For those of you who have already read it and want a refresher, or if you are okay with spoilers, let's get into it. So the story starts with 19-year-old Feyre Archeron hunting in the woods near the border between the human lands and the fairy realm of Prythian. This is important because 500 years ago, where the story begins, humans were enslaved by fairies. They eventually fought back and won their freedom, and now a magical wall divides the world. Humans live in the southern lands, and fairies live in Prythian to the north. Hate and fear fairies. Feyre's family is desperately poor. Her father used to be a wealthy merchant, but he lost everything when his ship sank on a risky voyage to pay off their debts. He also had his kneecaps broken, so he's permanently injured. He spends his days carving little wooden figures and not doing much of anything else. Feyre's two older sisters, Nesta and Elaine, don't really help either. Nesta is cold, bitter, and vain. Meanwhile, Elaine tends a little flower garden, which Feyre sees as frivolous when they're literally starving. Feyre is the youngest, but she's the one that's keeping everyone alive. She hunts, sells the pelts and meat, and provides for the entire family. So on a particular day during a hunt, Feyre is tracking a doe when she encounters this unnaturally large, realizes that it might be a fairy and she has to make a choice. If she kills a fairy, they might retaliate and kill her, which means her family would starve. But if she doesn't kill it, she's losing the doe and her family will starve anyway. So she decides to take the risk. She shoots the wolf with an ash arrow, which is lethal to fairies and slows their healing. And then she shoots a second arrow through its eye just to be sure. She takes the wolf pelt home. A few days later, during dinner at their cottage, this enormous beast bursts through the door. It's a fairy as large as a horse. The beast demands to know who killed his friend, the wolf. Feyre admits it was her and asks that her family be spared. The beast, who we later learn is named Tamlin, tells her that, according to the ancient treaty, she has two options: spend the rest of her life in Prythian or die. Feyre questions why he's even giving her the choice to live, but she believes him because fairies supposedly can't lie. Her father tries to negotiate, but Tamlin shuts him down. Feyre agrees to go. Then her father tells her to leave and never return, saying that she was always too good for them anyway. He does this hoping that this will make it easier for her to leave. Tamlin ends up taking Feyre through the wall and towards Prythian. During the journey, Feyre smells this metallic tang and falls asleep. She wakes up 2 days later, realizing that the smell was magic, and that Tamlin enchanted her to sleep through the journey. When she wakes, they've arrived at this estate in the Spring Court, where the place is beautiful, but Feyre is terrified and weak. She knows she can't escape because fairies are faster and stronger than humans. Inside the manor, Feyre sees Tamlin shift from his beast form into his human form. He's one of the High Fae, the ruling class of fairies who are beautiful, powerful, and deadly. He's wearing this ornate mask decorated with emeralds, which seems odd but significant. At dinner time, she meets Lucien, Tamlin's emissary and friend, who's also wearing a mask shaped like a wolf. Lucien is sarcastic and antagonistic towards Feyre at first, and she overhears him telling Tamlin that they should just kill her and abandon their plan. But Tamlin insists that she stay unharmed. Feyre ends up meeting a fairy servant named Alice, who takes Feyre to her room. And Feyre notices that all the fairies in the Spring Court are wearing masks. Something is clearly wrong here, but no one really wants to tell her what. Over the next few days, Feyre starts learning more about her situation. That's when Feyre learns that Tamlin has been secretly providing for her father and sisters, making sure that they're fed and comfortable. He also reveals that there's a blight on Prythian magic. 50 years ago, someone cursed the Spring Court during a party, and that's why everyone is stuck wearing masks, and why the court is mostly deserted. The blight is also why more dangerous fairies are crossing into the human. Ends up taking Feyre hunting, and they start to develop a cautious friendship. He tells her about the Suriel, a fairy creature that will answer any question if you trap it. Feyre, desperate for information, ends up trapping the Suriel and learns some crucial things. The blight came from Hybern, a fairy kingdom across the sea ruled by a king who hates the treaty and wants to destroy it. The Suriel also tells Feyre to stay with the High Lord. That's when Feyre realizes that Tamlin isn't just any fairy. He's the High Lord of the Spring Court, one of the 7 most powerful beings in Prythian. Now, over the weeks Feyre spends at the estate, things start to finally shift between her and Tamlin. She begins to paint again, something that she's always dreamed of doing. Tamlin shows her kindness, protects her from dangerous creatures that get past the borders, and slowly they begin to fall for each other. There's this beautiful slow tension where Feyre starts to see past her prejudice against fairies, and Tamlin starts to open up about his past. He tells her his entire family was murdered by another High Lord, which is how he became the ruler of the Spring Court. He also shows her this rose garden that his father planted for his mother as a mating gift, and it's incredibly romantic. Things begin to heat up during Calanmai, a spring festival where Tamlin has to participate in something called the Great Rite. Feyre is told to stay hidden, but of course, she ends up sneaking out. At the festival, 3 males try to take advantage of her, but she is rescued by this dark, handsome stranger who we later learn is named Rhysand, the High Lord of the Night Court. There is this instant attraction, but Feyre doesn't know who he is just yet. Lucien ends up finding her and drags her back to the manor, explaining that Tamlin has been possessed by magic during the ritual and would have claimed Feyre if he'd caught her scent. Later that night, Tamlin shows up at her door, still under the magic's influence, and ends up biting her and kissing her neck. She slaps him for being so presumptuous, but the tension between them is undeniable. After that, their relationship really begins to bloom. Tamlin apologizes with roses, and Feyre shows him her paintings. One night, she leaves her bedroom door unlocked. They become intimate, and Feyre falls completely for him. She's happier than she's ever been. That is, until Rhysand shows up at the Spring Court. This is where everything starts to unravel. Rhysand clearly knows something is going on, and Lucien calls him Amarantha's whore. Amarantha, we learn, is the mysterious she behind the blight. She's been keeping court under the mountain, and all the High Lords are trapped there. Rhysand discovers Feyre hiding in the room, and he uses his powers to get inside her mind, exposing her feelings for Tamlin and humiliating her in front of him. He forces Tamlin and Lucien to grovel in exchange for not telling Amarantha about Feyre. When Rhysand demands Feyre's name, she panics and ends up giving a fake one. Claire Better, the name of a girl from her village. After this, Tamlin ends up sending Feyre home because he's terrified that he can no longer keep her safe. And with only days left before some deadline that he won't explain, he decides that the only way to protect her is to get her out of Prythian. But before she leaves, there's this moment where Tamlin tells her that he loves her. But Feyre is too afraid to say it back, and so she heads back, ends up enchanting her to sleep during the journey again, and when she wakes, she's back at home with her family. Feyre's family is now wealthy. Her father's fortunes have mysteriously turned around, and thanks to Tamlin's magic, they've all been living in a beautiful estate. They think that Feyre has been visiting a rich aunt, but Feyre can't stop thinking about Tamlin. She's haunted by the Suriel's words to stay with the High Lord, and she feels like she made a terrible mistake. Then her father mentions that he's been thinking of buying the Better family land. The Betters were all murdered, and Claire Better has disappeared. Feyre realizes with horror that this happened because she gave Claire's name to Rhysand. Amarantha must have tortured and killed the real Claire, thinking she was the girl that Tamlin loved. Feyre is devastated and knows that she has to go back. Her sister Nesta, who reveals that Tamlin's memory glamour didn't work on her because she remembers everything, tells Feyre to go back to Prythian and never return. Feyre ends up crossing the wall and finding the Spring Court estate wrecked and deserted. She finds Alice, who finally explains everything, is one of King Hybern's generals. During the ancient war, her sister Clythia fell in love with a human named Jurian, but he betrayed and murdered her. Amarantha has hated humans ever since. After the treaty, instead of freeing her human slaves, she killed them all. She came to Prythian 100 years ago and decided to conquer it for herself. She poisoned all 7 High Lords at a ball and stole their powers, and she is the actual source of the blight. We also learned that Amarantha is obsessed with Tamlin. His family was allied with Hybern during the war, and she wants him as her lover. When Tamlin had refused her at the masquerade ball 50 years ago, saying he'd sooner take a human lover, she cursed him. The curse had specific conditions. Tamlin had to get a human girl who killed one of his men in an unprovoked attack to fall in love with him and admit it within 49 years, or Amarantha would claim him as her consort forever. The masks, the empty court, all of it was part of this curse, and Amarantha enchanted everyone so they couldn't tell Feyre the truth.
Feyre realizes that she was the human girl. She killed Andras, Tamlin's friend, which triggered the beginning to what possibly could have been the end. And she fell in love with Tamlin. But she left before telling him that she loved him, so the curse wasn't broken. Now, Amarantha has Tamlin and all of the other High Lords trapped under the mountain. Feyre begs Alice to take her there. And so Alice obliges. Alice brings Feyre through a secret passage into the mountain. She warns her not to trust her senses, not to make deals, and not to drink fairy wine. When Feyre arrives, she's caught by the Adder, this terrifying bat-like creature that drags her to Amarantha's throne room. The throne room is horrifying. Amarantha is there, beautiful and cruel, and with Tamlin at her side. Then Feyre sees Claire Better's mutilated body nailed to the wall. Amarantha tortured and killed her, thinking that she was the girl that Tamlin loved. Amarantha realizes that Tamlin truly loves Feyre, not Claire, and she's furious. She wears Jurian's eye in a ring and his finger bone around her neck, keeping him magically alive so he can witness her cruelty. Offers Feyre a deal. If Feyre can complete 3 tasks, she'll free Tamlin and the Spring Court. Amarantha also gives her a riddle. If Feyre can solve it at any point, the curse will break immediately. Between tasks, Feyre will be imprisoned. Feyre, desperate to save Tamlin, agrees without fully thinking it through. Amarantha has her beaten unconscious. Feyre wakes up in a dungeon cell. Lucien visits and heals her wounds, but he's punished before he can tell her much. Amarantha summons all the High Lords of Prythian to watch Feyre's trial. This is supposed to be entertainment for them. The first task is brutal. Feyre is thrown into an arena with a giant worm that lives in a maze of its own filth. The worm is blind and hunts by smell. Feyre realizes this and covers herself in the filth to mask her scent. She builds a trap with sharp bones and lures the worm with her own body. Lucien shouts a warning after she loses track of it, and the worm bites her before falling into her trap and dying. She barely survives, and Amarantha sends her back to ends up developing a fever from her wound and starts dying. Rhysand visits her cell and offers her a deal. He'll heal her if she agrees to spend 1 week out of every month with him for the rest of her life. Feyre, desperate to survive, agrees. Rhysand heals her and marks her arm with this intricate tattoo featuring an eye on the palm of her hand to seal the deal. Feyre is terrified about what Tamlin will think. Over the next few weeks, Rhysand manipulates the situation in strange ways. He ensures that Feyre gets proper food, he stops the guards from giving her impossible tasks, and every night he brings her to the throne room dressed in revealing clothes and body paint, then drugs her with fairy wine and forces her to dance provocatively in front of humiliating and calculated. Rhysand is using Feyre to torture Tamlin, trying to drive him into a fury. But he also seems to be protecting her in some subtle way, and Feyre can't quite figure out why. The second task is worse. Feyre and Lucien are trapped in a room with a spiked grate descending from the ceiling. She has to solve a riddle and pull the correct lever or she'll be crushed. The problem is that Feyre is illiterate. She can't read the riddle on the wall. She's about to guess when the tattoo on her arm starts burning. The eye narrows, and she realizes Rhysand is in her mind, guiding her to the right lever. She pulls it and survives, but she's devastated by how close she came to failing. Rhysand visits her that night and tells her to keep her composure. He licks her tears, which is weird and intimate, and she pushes him away. But she realizes that his visit snapped her out of her despair and gave her the will to keep fighting. As the third task approaches, Feyre is certain that she won't survive. But then she hears music coming through a vent in her cell, and it inspires this beautiful vision of the outside world. She believes it's a message from Tamlin, and her hope is restored. The night before the final task, Rhysand doesn't drug Feyre. She and Tamlin find each other in a corridor and begin kissing one last time, desperate and heartbroken. Rhysand discovers them and kisses Feyre when he hears Amarantha coming, covering for them so that Amarantha won't know that they were together. The whole court sees Feyre, and she's humiliated again. But later, Rhysand tells her the truth. He's been plotting against Amarantha this whole time. He's been using Feyre to work Tamlin into a fury so that when Feyre breaks the curse, Tamlin will destroy Amarantha. Rhysand admits that he could have forced worse terms on Feyre, but he chose not to. The final task is the worst. Feyre has to murder 3 innocent High Fae in cold blood, the same way she killed Andras. She declares her love for Tamlin, trying to break the curse before the task begins, but Amarantha ignores her. Anguished, Feyre kills the first 2 fairies by stabbing them in the heart. Then the third victim is revealed, Tamlin himself.
Amarantha says Feyre has to kill him or die. The task is technically fair. She never promised Feyre that she could have Tamlin alive. Feyre begins to break down, but then she remembers something. Lucien and the Adder kept referring to Tamlin's heart of stone. She realizes that this is literal. Tamlin's heart has been turned to stone by the curse, so the ash dagger won't kill him. Tamlin smiles at her, encouraging her to do it. Feyre stabs him in the heart while telling him that she loves him. Tamlin survives, but Amarantha refuses to honor the bargain. She threatens to kill Feyre unless Feyre admits that she doesn't really love Tamlin. Feyre, in agony, suddenly solves Amarantha's riddle. The answer is love. Love is something people search for but never find. It gives itself freely, but people misuse it. It's gentle until scorned, and when it kills, it does so slowly. Feyre shouts the answer just as Amarantha breaks her neck. Feyre dies. She watches what happens next through Rhysand's eyes because their bargain still connects them. Tamlin, finally freed from the curse and his stone heart, goes feral. He stabs Amarantha through the skull and tears out her throat, ultimately killing her. Then all of the 7 High Lords gather around Feyre's body, each of them giving a bit of their magic to help bring her back. Tamlin kisses her and tells her he loves her. Feyre is then resurrected, but she's not human anymore. She's been transformed into a High Fae, immortal and powerful. The curse is broken, and Amarantha is finally dead. Feyre is torn between relief and horror because she murdered 2 innocent fairies to get here. After a short meeting with the High Lords, Tamlin finally takes Feyre. Feyre meets Rhysand on the mountainside. He tells her he defended her at the end because he didn't want her to die alone. He admits that he loves flying, but often loses the things he loves. Feyre tells him her body might be High Fae now, but her heart still feels human. Rhysand says that's a good thing. And then suddenly, he looks at her, giving her this shocked look, almost in awe, and vanishes without explanation. Tamlin and Feyre head home to the Spring Court, and Feyre finally looks forward to spending eternity with him, free. And that's where book 1 ends. But if you've read the rest of the series, you know that this is just the beginning.
All right, guys, thank you so much for hanging out with me today. If you want to dive deeper into the books I talk about here, you can head over to my blog at novelsandnectar.com with a K, where I share spicy chapter lists, similar book recommendations, song pairings, and discussion questions if you want to keep the conversation going. If you are part of a book club and want ready-to-use questions and guides all in one place, you can also join the Nectar Nook, my membership where I put everything together for you in one cute, cozy space. And if you want to keep up with new episodes and new reads, be sure to hit the subscribe button and join my newsletter so you never miss a bookish update. Thanks again for listening, and I will see you in the next one.